Hello, everyone, and thank you for the warm words and introduction, Noah. I'm so excited to be here today with Adam Elslinger, the CEO of Penumbra. For me, it's particularly exciting because it's emblematic of the opportunities of the field of medical VR. Penumbra is in a position to, and is in the process of making a huge difference into clinical virtual reality. By making a commitment to advance the use of VR into clinical care in a substantial way, Adam's company will have a large and significant impact. This may very well be the turning point for digital health in general and for clinical use of VR specifically. Adam, welcome. I know that Penumbra has established a deep relationship with the game development community. You're working on several major game development studios to utilize their skills and experience to develop clinical products that will be part of the Penumbra system. Please take a minute to tell us about Penumbra, your commitment, your passion, your excitement, and perhaps tell us some stories about success you've had helping patients recover from their injuries.
Yeah, well, thank you, Walter. It's great to be here at this great conference and festival. Real brief history on Penumbra. We certainly didn't start out as a company focused on virtual reality and the gaming world and its impact. We started out sort of in the traditional medical device way by making products that could go inside the body to treat a myriad of conditions, whether it's a stroke or some other condition in the body, in the vasculature. And we got into thinking about virtual reality about 4+ years ago when I was introduced to a great company, Sixth Sense, that had done some early work and developed some novel technology around tracking and avatar use. And it became pretty obvious from that meeting that there were a lot of medical conditions where the use of VR could really enhance treatment and recovery, depending on what the condition was. Stroke recovery for one, where you're trying to tap into neuroplasticity and sort of get the brain rewired. Really a perfect application from using VR, as well as a host of other conditions around mental health and pain management and so on. So we really started that journey, and really over the last year and a half, when we've been working with the community with our current product, have we really understood a lot of the sort of the benefits and the friction points. And really, I think we're in a position now where understanding that we think we can help really solve a lot of those and work with a lot of the great companies together who are developing really great content for a variety of medical conditions. So I think we're at the starting line of what I think will be a really, really great 2, 3, 4 years in the development of this extraordinary technology to help, really just a huge number of people. I mean, counting them in the, potentially tens of millions of people that can be helped.
Well, you mentioned the word together, and I think that's really important, especially for the audience that we're talking with today. The approach that Penumbra and the Real System have is to develop a platform. It will have applications for different clinical problems that Penumbra is developing, but it will also serve as a platform for other developers who have created interventions to help with a variety of clinical conditions and also situations on the health and wellness zone. And it will save a lot of time and a lot of effort and open up the pathways for these groups by having a platform that has such great capability and also a presence in the medical market. So can you elaborate a little bit about the vision you have for a ecosystem and a platform approach for clinical VR?
Sure. Well, it sort of started, as I alluded to, with our partnership with Sixth Sense, where their technology was particularly intriguing for our original application, which was neuro rehab cause, that is necessary because some neurological injury or condition, where moving the body and tracking your body accurately to know how well you were improving was critical. And also because we were a medical device company, we're used to making sort of the whole product, if you will. And we worked early on in working to develop relationships around the hardware and the headset itself, plus the tracking. So we've invested a lot in the hardware side of this, as well as, of course, on the software side, and building a really just incredible group of folks in our own studio. But it became very clear out in talking to customers that there are a lot of people who are developing really, really great applications, where they've done a lot of work. They have a real clinical basis for that work. And the friction points, how do you get those applications out there? If everyone is selling hardware and their software, and the users don't really know what to do with that. They can't really have a closet full of headsets, and where do you charge them all, and how does that all work? So they're looking for sort of a streamlined solution anyway. And we think with all of that great work out there, we should all be sort of combining forces. There's a lot of the stuff that people don't always want to do, working with the IT departments in healthcare facilities, hospitals particularly have a lot of rules around that. The legal departments have all kinds of rules around data and collection, and you have certain laws around that with patients, of course. And so our goal is to sort of make that part pretty easy. We know how to do that part, at least, we're giving it our best shot. And really allow for a lot of these really extraordinary developers of applications to be able to, eventually, have a place to go with that. So we can handle, the other part as well. So we'll see how it turns out, but I think there's an opportunity. It's really one of those rare, I think, clinical applications, at least as I've seen it. We started out doing things that hadn't been done before in treating stroke, with physical devices to go in and remove blood clot. And we didn't know, would it work and would it matter to the patient? We assumed it would, but we didn't know. Here, we already know, there's so much data already from people's experiences with the use of VR in a host of medical conditions, that part of the question, for the most part, has been answered already. And that's a big deal. That isn't that typical. And now we just have to work on how do we deliver the technology in an easy and seamless way, so that everyone who needs it has access to it. And that challenge, is huge. It takes a big investment, but it seems a little bit more certain, albeit there's lots of uncertainties to it, but it's a little more certain than the fundamental clinical question. That seems, I think most of us feel pretty comfortable that there's enough evidence to say what we're trying to do here will help a lot of people. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I think that the optics for the investment community are fantastic too. Many of the academic groups and early stage companies or game development studios have been striving for years to develop and validate some wonderful healthcare applications. But having a large, successful medical device company, public medical device company like Penumbra, make a commitment to the zone changes the vantage point from the investment community. It really does signify that we're on the other side of a threshold. And as we've all known, the value of this approach, but now it somehow takes on a different momentum. And your platform approach, I think, will just facilitate even more growth. I'm so excited. Can you perhaps be specific about some of the successes you've seen with patients already? Maybe a few examples there of how the real system has made a big difference.
Well, thank you for asking that question. At the end of the day, that's what matters the most and what drives, I think, all of us. And frankly, it was one of the reasons that I've been so profoundly excited about this. Very early on, we worked with a patient who had a stroke, and she had sort of plateaued in her recovery. She was pretty diligent in going to traditional rehab, but still had plateaued for the most part. And then working with VR and her therapist, she continued to make progress after having plateaued. And it was really obvious that the VR itself was what was allowing her to start to have success, and really regained a huge amount of function. And to watch her, and now in a more commercial setting, to watch patients who come into rehab having sort of almost given up, feeling like that they're going to sort of not continue to improve, and then really sometimes within a week or two of using VR, sort of make another breakthrough. We get those stories now almost every week from our team in the field, and it's exciting. It's just extraordinary to watch that early success, and I think that's obvious to anyone who, if you're again, focusing on our current sort of early applications around stroke rehab and other neurological conditions, it is really hard. You're basically forcing yourself to rewire your brain to put those movements or those functions, for your arms into
depressing and boring. And we need to leverage the skills that our friends in the game community can help bring to make it more of an odyssey or a quest or a journey and a story.
Right. Exactly. It's exactly right. And when it happens, there's nothing better. I alluded to the story of this first patient. When we first met, she wasn't really able to write. She lost most of the function in the hand and arm that she used to write. And then about a year plus later, maybe a little longer, she was coming into our office to work with our development team, and brought me a little, really one of the most extraordinary gifts, which was a handwritten note that she had written with her hand that she can now use. And that what else is there? That's pretty cool.
That's what it's all about. That's so heartening. I know that you lead a public company, and as such, there's some things that you can't talk about. But I am going to ask about a zone, and I hope there are some things you can talk about in that zone. And that's the zone of applying digital health, VR technology to behavioral health, to psychiatry, to psychology. That's an area where there has been some foundational work showing the value of this approach.
Yeah.
Is that on the Penumbra roadmap?
Absolutely. And we recently, and I think our last public earnings call, called out that as one of the areas. We haven't gone into, great detail, but it is definitely an area that we are focused on. And I think there are a lot of other folks who know and believe, and have even shown, some real benefit. And I think now more than ever, the opportunity, I think one of the things, again, we have not yet sort of gone into some of the additional hardware, work that we're doing, but the VR is in many configurations, more of a solitary experience. You put a headset on and you sort of go somewhere else, if you will. What we want to do, and I think we are going to do, is bring that, to be able to connect, with folks in a way that makes it less solitary, whether it's your therapist, in doing rehab, or family members and so on. And I think, that opens up some of the possibilities for real change in the way we think about the experiences that can be done in VR. So we're pretty excited about the future. And again, looking forward to working with a lot of really amazing folks out there.
Well, and I think that ability that you just described lends itself to promoting and enabling clinician supervised clinical care and telemedicine.
Yep.
And during the horrible pandemic that we've all gone through, we've learned the value of staying connected and continuing healthcare despite being separated by distance. Also, to reach underserved populations, leveraging technology in that way is going to be really key. And so it's so exciting to hear that that's part of the Real System roadmap. I think one thing that is also worth mentioning to this group is that Penumbra already has an existing relationship with a number of the game development studios, and that they're in the process of helping expand the product mix that you have. And you've already been leveraging game heuristics and game technologies as part of your product development roadmap.
Yeah, to start, we built our own studio. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were a medical device company, used to hiring biomedical engineers and making products, that would go into a sterile pouch, and get sterilized before they were used in surgery. So, we had to learn, the whole concept of what a studio was and how it functioned and who to hire, but really got lucky and hired some just extraordinarily talented folks in our own studio to get us started, but to supplement their work and to add, go a little faster. We have worked with some other studios sort of in a second party relationship, and that will continue. We'll certainly add to it, and then, as you've alluded, go into more of a third party platform relationship. So there'll be, I think, a lot of opportunity, hopefully, for anyone interested in doing sort of therapeutic healthcare applications, in a lot of different areas. We'd love to, share, as soon as we can, our timeline and the, what that might look like over the next number of years. It's not going to be built out instantaneously. Obviously, there's a lot of work ahead, but we do think there's going to be a real opportunity. And as I said, when you add up the people that suffer from the conditions that we can help, that's sort of how I look at our work, sort of measured in the number of people we can help. This is by far the largest opportunity we have as a company to help people. We measure a lot of our other areas in the hundreds of thousands of people that we can help, and that's real. They're in life-threatening situations, and we can help them. Here we can measure the number of people in really the tens of millions of people just in the US, and worldwide it becomes much more significant. So it's a rare moment in healthcare.
Well, and I think our audience is also appreciating that it's a rare CEO who values the success of his company based on how many patients they can help, as opposed to how many things they can sell and what the volume of those units are. So kudos to you, Adam, for having that framing for this. And it shows in the product direction and the product risk. And I guess that brings up another topic, and this might be a little personal, so feel free to dodge it in any way you want, but you're taking some risk here. You've in my opinion, it's not that risky, because I've seen over the decades the underlying research showing the value of VR. For example, the work showing that one can take people who've plateaued in a particular rehabilitation process and help them regain more function using a VR system. But to the outside world, to the investment community, this is new. And so do you feel like you're taking a personal risk by taking the company in this direction? Or do you feel like there's enough underlying evidence and momentum and opportunity to propel you in this direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't sort of look at it quite that way. I've sort of always looked at the distinction between risk and uncertainty. There's been some academic research on the differences between those two. Risk, as you framed it, is really a measurable thing. You quantify the pros and the cons, and you can sort of calculate, what is the likelihood you'll do X or Y. Uncertainty is very different. Uncertainty is, can it be done? When we first started this project, it was really in the category of uncertainty. It was 4+ years ago. The field wasn't as developed. It was much more nascent. But at the end of the day, the thing that was obvious was it's likely, if we got the technology right, it would help. And that, to me, made it sort of obvious that we should try this. But to take you back to when we first started the company, now in 17 years ago or something like that, I've lost track of time. We had this idea of making a catheter that could go through the femoral artery down in your groin and snake all the way past your heart, deep into the brain, and suck out blood clot that caused a stroke. And everyone who heard that thought it was crazy. And even the doctors who were going to end up using our product thought it was crazy. So, that is sort of already in our DNA, as a company. You have to do things that haven't been done. If you're just doing things that have been done, you'll just be following others. So something like this really became pretty clear that if we can get the technology right, if we can build the structure, focus on where the friction points are, in the delivery of the technology, we have a higher level of certainty that it will work, because we already had a sense from the work you've done and a lot of the folks you've worked with over the years have done to already prove that. And you did the hard work. You did the work at the beginning, to sort of prove this over the years, and we're just coming in, and I hope it's okay that we're borrowing your great work to try to push it forward.
Oh, it's more than okay. It doesn't count unless it gets out there to help patients, and so that's why the scientists and the early stage medical product development groups are so excited to have sort of a big brother company. Well, big brother's not the right term. A more experienced company with better reach to help us take all the hard work we've been doing over decades and really moving it out there and getting it in use with patients. It's so exciting. Well, Adam, I know we only have a few more minutes before we need to move over to the Q&A zone in the Spark room. I think the moderator will probably put the link for that in the chat channel here. Mm-hmm. But do you have any questions for me or for the audience? While you're here, you have an audience of some very sophisticated and talented developers.
Yeah. Absolutely, Walter. Thank you. You've watched, and been part of, driving the use of this technology in therapeutic healthcare, really from the beginning. What would be your advice for people who want to get into this space? Where would you suggest they focus in terms of 2 or 3 or 4 of the applications or medical conditions, where would they start if they were interested in sort of, doing things that are new and novel, and not, sort of following up on the lessons you've learned, sometimes the hard way?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I do have several answers. Number one is, I think it depends on your personality, your predilections, and your talents. If you're very creative and you're good at storytelling, then there's a need to put, as part of the sometimes very boring clinical products are out there, there's a need to put an overlay of cognitive engagement and our brains are so good at following stories and feeling like we're engaged. And we need to make the healthcare journey less 15 minutes at a doctor's office and then you're home trying to remember what you need to do and why you should be doing it. So stories and VR platforms provide us a way to build that in. If you're more of a engineer, and that tends to be your talented, and you love to, for example, work with wearable sensors and taking the data from wearable sensors and using them to dynamically change an experience, that's a fantastic way to jump in. We need that. We need to have more of a precision medicine approach to dynamically change the clinical process based on an individual's response and also an individual's background. So we need to leverage machine learning and in a way that protects data, and that's another issue. Bring in those sort of talents that help us understand psychophysiology, analysis of cognitive states, come up with new methods of measuring function, and both cognitive function and physical function. We have new measurement tools, but we need new heuristics about how to score, how to report that data. And then on the other side is we need help coming up with new business models too. The platform we are developing is going to be able to span from health and wellness and assist. I imagine at some point in the near future, we will have a hub at home that does not just clinical testing of our blood sugar levels and catecholamines and cytokines, but it will also be a platform for helping perhaps to assess our mental health. And I was on a panel discussion earlier today, and the point was raised that mental health shouldn't be viewed as addressing a problem. There should be an aspect of our lifestyles that, just as we look out for our physical health by exercise and nutrition, we need to be proactive on social engagement, refining our cognitive skills, especially with an aging population. So there is so much fun work to be done, and we need talents from all sectors to come and join. And your company, Penumbra, is providing that platform for people to do that. So it's so very exciting.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great perspective, and I do think there are just a huge group of opportunities, whether it's as an independent company working on applications or support applications to anybody who is looking to get involved more directly. We can't hire enough engineers right now to work on some of this work that we're doing. So I think with that we can do some pretty good work over the next decade or so.
There's also a need for just basic science too. As Penumbra develops products, we need to have arm's length evaluation and validation of the efficacy and safety of those products, of course. But we also need to have an understanding, as new technology evolves, from the basic research labs, like Jeremy Bailenson at Stanford University, how we can incorporate the learnings from those research groups into the design of products. So really, it's an ecosystem of need and an ecosystem of opportunity.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that's one of the best parts to me of this journey so far, is that unlike some of the other areas that we make products in, where we have direct competitors, and we're all sort of trying to do good work, but you can only use one product in a patient's body. So you sort of doctors pick. Here there's such an opportunity to all sort of work together in a way that builds something special, and everyone can do well in the process, including obviously the patients.
Fantastic. I couldn't agree more. Well, Adam, thank you for the vigorous and fun conversation. I'm so excited and just can't keep talking about how important the work you've done is for emerging and moving forward our field. So thank you for that.
You too.
So audience, we're going to move now over to the Spark Room to have some further questions. And please prepare some questions for us, and we'll meet you there shortly.
All right. Thank you.